The Roman Church said no usury in any shape or form, and so this was the loophole for the Jews. A Christian then couldn't lend to another Christian. So the Jews came in as the money lenders of Europe, and therefore this is part of the way in which they became hated, like the merchant of Venice, because they were cleverer, better educated, better businessmen than most of the Christians, and then they got wealthy and they charged usury and so forth. Well, medieval Romanism opposed usury, and the Reformers said that charging interest of a decent amount was lawful, useful, helped the economy. This was part of the reason why Northern Europe became more wealthy, because it furthered business. And then, as if all that isn't enough, and as if the Catechism wants to make sure that everything is caught and nothing slips through, it adds that we must not unlawfully appropriate the goods of our neighbour in any way, any other way, that's forbidden by God. You can think here, for instance, of cheating on your tax forms. And now we're back to the 5th commandment. Thou shalt not steal, 8th commandment. Thou shalt not steal from the civil government by cheating your tax form. Because Romans 13 says part of the honour which we give to those God has put over us in the civil sphere is we give custom to whom custom is due, tribute to whom tribute, that is, we pay our taxes. With a little bit more thought, we can conceive of various and many ways in which we can unlawfully seek to obtain the goods of our neighbour. Blackmail is one. Blackmail. If you don't give me money, I will tell on you. You will go to jail. That's a very fruitful one. You can milk that one for many years. The church treasurer diddling the offerings. All sorts of ways. Going on strike. Oh, there's another one. And here we have another instance of sin against the 5th commandment, honouring your employer, by which you sin against the 8th commandment. That is, you go on strike in order to obtain more money, better pay, or improved working conditions, or both, in an unlawful way, because the employee has no right to lay down his tools and go on strike, which is a form of blackmail, no more than a wife can go on strike against her husband, or a husband against his wife, and say, well, since you're not treating me properly, I'm not going to make you any meals, we're not going to sleep together. Or a parent with a child, and the child says, I think you're a very bad mother, very bad father, and I'm not going to do what I'm told. And until you apologise to me, I'm going on strike. You can't do that sort of thing. That's not on. Protection money. That's a lovely phrase. The gang goes to some local business and shops and says, give me some money, and if you don't, I will come back and smash your windows. And if you don't do it again, I'll smash your kneecaps. And they call that protection money. Or, you pay us and then we will protect you from the other gangs who might come in and smash your windows or break your kneecaps. Lovely. Lovely. An unlawful, wicked way of appropriating, typically, money from somebody else. One of my favourite proverbs, because I find it so amusing and true to life, is that one which deals with the deceitful buyer. He goes to the person and says, oh, it's nothing, that's rubbish, no good, sure nobody would want that, all I can give you is a pittance for it. And then when he's got it, he goes away and tells his friend, what a great deal I did, I just conned him out of this, and the poor fool, he took, that's breaking not just the 9th commandment, but the 8th commandment, thou shalt not steal. Adultery. Adultery is stealing. Adultery is stealing because you are stealing another person's wife or husband. The 8th commandment now comes into play with the 7th commandment. Similarly, you could say pornography. You have no right to look lasciviously at that person. That person may say, I am willing for filthy lucre to expose myself to get wealthy, but that person doesn't control their body. They cannot do that, because their body belongs to God by creation and providence. But let's stick with adultery. You steal another person's wife or husband by lying with them, because that person does not belong to you. The wife belongs to the husband, and the husband to the wife, and their bodies and souls are off limit for you. And it's the same thing with divorce and remarriage. Someone who remarries belongs to their original, that is, true spouse. That was the vow they took to. Till death us do part. And you get a legal declaration from the state that you are divorced. Legally the state allows you to remarry. But someone who is divorced and remarried while their spouse is living belongs to their first spouse. And anybody married to them claims a person that does not belong to them and is not only living in continuous adultery, but in continuous theft. Because they have stolen the body that lies next to them on the bed. There's all sorts of ways to break this commandment. That's why we have the catch-all, by any other way forbidden by God. See, sometimes we not only think that the 8th commandment is an easy one, but we also reckon that the Bible has little to say about the 8th commandment. Let's turn to Leviticus 19 now. Rules on holy living as God's people in the world. Let's start with verses 9 and 10. This was an Old Testament law for Israel, that when you harvested the grain, you didn't go into the corners. You left a little bit for the poor and needy. And when you picked your grapes or olives, you left a few. The idea was that the poor who didn't own land, who needed to keep body and soul together, could then come and take the bits that you missed and left. Of course, this commends itself to us. Not that that's a law which our society has to keep, but because it shows kindness, it provides for the poor, and it provides for the poor in such a way that they work rather than just getting it handed to them. So then they are active in obtaining. So it's a very good law. Verse 11 says, "Ye shall not steal, neither deal falsely, neither lie one to another." And here again we have stealing, but the mention of lying, the 9th commandment, in this context especially implies what we saw earlier, that you tell lies oftentimes to steal. So that's another way, not just taking what the Old Testament law gave to the poor by reaping into the corners, but this way too. Verse 13 deals with stealing and defrauding your neighbour, especially in connection with paying him. Paying him. And being slow to pay him. Don't defraud your neighbour, don't rob him. And when a man is hired by you, you don't keep it, that is, the pay, all night until the morning. This assumes a society in which the person needs their pay day by day to keep things ticking over. So, in our society, few people, I dare say, are just as tight as that with them, but you pay them every week or every month regularly, and you don't have them coming hounding you and asking you to pay him and begging you, which, as well as sickening the person, is a breaking of the 8th commandment. He has paid you, he has done the work, you agreed to pay him, now pay him and have done with it. Verse 15, "Ye shall do no unrighteousness in judgment, thou shalt not respect the person of the poor on the one hand, nor honour the person of the mighty, but in righteousness shalt thou judge thy neighbour." And you say, what has this to do with stealing? Well, this, you owe the man justice. That's a debt. You owe him justice. And so if you're, to use our terms, a bleeding heart liberal way on the left, so that the poor and the downtrodden are always right, you go with him no matter what justice says.